Today, the demographic time bomb, net migration, and Big Australia. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Welcome to the latest post covering finance and property news with a distinctively Australian flavour. The Australian Bureau of Statistics just released the latest population data for Australia, and it makes pretty interesting, if slightly worrying, reading. They say that the estimated resident population of Australia as at June 2019 was 25,364,300 people. And that's an increase of 381,600 people since the 30th of June 2018, and 75,600 people since the 31st of March 2019. So we are continuing to grow. The annual population growth rate for the year ended the 30th of June was 1.5%. Now, the contribution to that population growth was higher from net overseas migration, which comprised 62.5% of the growth, compared with the natural increase, which was 37.5% of growth. And in terms of the number of people, the estimate of natural increase for the year was 143,300 people, an increase of 0.5% or 700 people, compared with the natural increase for the year ended a year earlier of 142,600 people. For the year ended the 30th of June 2019, Australia's preliminary net overseas migration was 238,300, and that was 100 people higher than the net overseas migration estimate for the prior year. At the state and territory level, population growth has three main components: the net increase, the net overseas migration, and the net interstate migration. Although the majority of states and territories experienced positive population growth in the year to the 30th of June, the proportion of each of those components contributed to population growth variance between the states and territories. For the year to the 30th of June, the natural increase was the major contributor of population in Western Australia and the Australian Capital Territory. Net interstate migration loss was the largest component of population change in the Northern Territory, and net overseas migration was the major contributor of population changes in New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, South Australia, and Tasmania. Now, if you look at net inward migration, there were gains in Victoria, Queensland, and Tasmania, but all other states and territories recorded net interstate migration losses compared with the previous year, and the number of births registered for the end of June 2019 decreased in half of the states and territories. The largest percentage decrease was in Western Australia at 2.7%, and that was followed by Victoria, down 2.2%, the Northern Territory 1.9%, and Queensland 0.5%, whereas the largest increase was in Tasmania at 4%, followed by the Australian Capital Territory at 2.1%, New South Wales at 1.8%, and South Australia at 1.6%. The number of net overseas migrant arrivals for the year to 30th of June increased in Tasmania, up 9.1%, Queensland, up 5.5%, South Australia, 5.1%, Western Australia, 3.9%, Victoria, 1.8%, and the Northern Territory at 1.2%. But the largest percentage decrease in net overseas migration occurred in the Australian Capital Territory, down 11.4%, followed by New South Wales, down 0.7%. And compared with the previous year, the number of net overseas migrant departures for the year ended June 2019 increased in Tasmania at 19.7%, Victoria 9%, the Northern Territory 3.8%, the Australian Capital Territory 3.6%, New South Wales 3.4%, and South Australia 1.5%. The largest percentage decrease was recorded in Western Australia at 6.7%, followed by Queensland down 1% in the year to the 30th of June. Victoria, Queensland, and Tasmania had net interstate migration gains. Queensland had the highest net gain with 22,800 people. This was followed by Victoria at 12,200 people and Tasmania 2,000 people. And net losses from interstate migration were in New South Wales, down 22,100 people, Western Australia down 6,500, the Northern Territory down 4,400, South Australia down 4,000, and the Australian Capital Territory down 200. And all states and territories except the Northern Territory recorded positive population growth in the year. Victoria recorded the highest growth rate of all states and territories at 2.1%. The Northern Territory recorded the lowest growth rate at down 0.5%. So the first point to take away is that we are growing the population of Australia most strongly by overseas migration. And interestingly, despite some comments among politicians that the rate of migration is decreasing, it's not true. It's as strong as ever. Now let's look at the consequences of that in terms of the age structure of the population. The median age, which is the age at which half the population is older and half is younger, of the Australian population increased by 2 years over the last 2 decades, from 35 years to 37 years. But between the 30th of June 2018 and 30th of June 2019, the median age remained steady at 37 years. Tasmania experienced the largest increase in median age over the last 20 years, increasing by 6 years, from 36 years in 1999 to 42 years in 2019. Interstate migration of younger adults from Tasmania to the Australian mainland has contributed to this accelerated ageing. At the 30th of June 2019, Tasmania had the highest median age of all the states and territories, 42 years, followed by South Australia, 40 years. The Northern Territory had the lowest median age at 33 years, followed by the Australian Capital Territory at 35 years. Like most developed countries, Australia's population is ageing as a result of sustained low fertility and increasing life expectancy. This has resulted in proportionally fewer children under 15 years of age in the population and a larger proportion of people aged 65 and over. In the 20 years between 1999 and 2019, the proportion of children decreased from 20.9% to 18.7% of the total population. And in the year ending 30th June 2019, the number of children increased by 1%, 48,900 people, compared with an increase of 1.2% or 53,600 people in the previous year. Over this period, the number of 0 to 4-year-olds decreased by 5,100, down 0.3%. 5 to 9-year-olds increased by 14,200, up 0.9%. And those aged between 10 and 14 years increased by 39,800, which is 2.6%. And in the year ended 30th of June, the ACT had the largest percentage increase in the number of children at 1.9%, followed by Victoria at 1.3%, Queensland 1.1%, and New South Wales at 1%. The Northern Territory was the only state or territory with a percentage decrease, down 1%. In June 1999, 2 out of 3 people were aged between 15 and 64 years, usually referred to as the working age population. This proportion increased to a high of 67.5% in 2009, before declining to 65.4% by the 30th of June 2019. And over the last 20 years, to the 30th of June, the working age population grew by 32%, slower than the growth of the remaining population at 40.4%. The slower growth in the working ages has occurred since 2010. And over the 5 years to the 30th of June 2019, the working age population grew by 6.4% compared to 11.4% for the remainder. And the main contributor to the increased growth of the non-working ages was the growth in the population aged 65 and over. In the year ended 30th of June 2019, the Australian working age population increased by 1.3% or 207,400 persons, but during this period the working age population in Victoria grew by 2%, higher than the national growth rate. In contrast, the population of 15 to 64-year-olds declined in the Northern Territories. There were 290,600 young people aged 15 years who entered the working age population, while 254,800 people turned 65 years and left the working age population in the year to the 30th of June. And over the 20 years between 1999 and 2019, the proportion of the population aged 65 years and over increased from 12.3% to 15.9%. This group is projected to increase more rapidly over the next decade as further cohorts of baby boomers Those born between the years of 1946 and 1964 turned 65. By the end of 2019, 9 of these birth year cohorts will have reached 65 years, and there are 10 remaining. And in the year to the 30th of June, the number of people aged 65 years and over increased by 125,400 people, or 3.2%. And in the year ended 30th of June, the population aged 65 years and over grew in all states and territories. The largest percentage increase in this group was in the Northern Territory, up 4.9%, followed by Western Australia and Queensland, 3.9%. And over the past 2 decades, the number of people aged 85 years and over has increased by 117.1%, compared with a total population growth of 34.8% over the same period. And in the year to the 30th of June, the number of people aged 85 years and over increased by 12,600 people at 2.5% to reach 515,700. And there were more females at 317,600 than males at 198,100 in this age group, which reflects the higher life expectancy of females. Over the same period, the largest percentage increase of people aged 85 years and over occurred in the Northern Territory at 6.2%, followed by Western Australia 3.3%, Queensland and Tasmania 3.1%, Victoria and the Australian Capital Territory 2.9%, New South Wales at 2%, and South Australia at 1.2%. So the second point to understand, therefore, is that despite the stronger overseas migration, the demographic shift to older Australians with a smaller proportion working relative to previously continues. And this is going to have a considerable impact on the economy and on the life of those who are working now. Now, I think we should be celebrating that people can live for longer and can enjoy an extended retirement. But the consequences are significant in terms of the overall economic dynamics of the country. And I do worry that we continue to inflate the country by bringing more migrants in. It helps with the demographic time bomb that we're looking at. But the result is pressure on wages, pressure on infrastructure, and frankly, even pressure on housing ultimately. Now, these are big and important issues which, in my view, cannot be tackled within the normal political cycle. And my own view is we need a bigger plan and more strategic thinking about the nature of migration and how demographics work into the long term. Because at the moment, it seems to me that we are pulling certain levers, but there are significant unintended consequences. I'm Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Many thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.